Hello friends, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on the things I've been working on over the past couple of months. I kind of want to do these types of videos, episodes every once in a while, mainly just for myself, so I can look back and see the progress I've made, but also for the three of you who are genuinely interested. Here's the things I've been up to. Past couple of months, I've been obviously working on the podcast and using all my nights and weekends for that, and did that for about 2 months. And it was interesting. I was talking with one of my guests after recording. He's self-employed, and I said, like, hey man, here are the things I'm doing. And I kind of listed them all off, and I'm like, what else do I need to be doing? And he goes, dude, you're doing too much. I was like, what? I was like, dude, no, I should be doing more, right? And he's like, no, dude, you're doing way too much. He's like, you're spreading yourself so thin, exhausting yourself, doing all these little tasks when you need to focus on just one or two core things. And he went on to explain deep work. It's something I've heard before, and some of you guys are like, oh yeah, I know what deep work is. But he's like, here's how I go about my day. He's like, in the morning, do my normal routine, and then from 8 to 1. That is the time I've set aside to get all my deep work done. He's like, the only thing I do during those 4 to 5 hours is just work on one thing. And for him, that's editing his videos for his clients. And that's it. His phone is on airplane mode or in the next room. All distractions are completely gone. That's the only thing he works on. And then he'll, in the afternoon, eat his lunch, go work out, and then he takes time to recharge. That's how we have to think about our bodies, is we have to recharge. And that looks like different for each person. Maybe it's reading, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's just sitting in silence and being bored. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you were in the car and you didn't listen to music or didn't listen to a podcast? For me, that's very rare. And that's something I've been trying to implement more, is sitting in silence. One, it's a great time to pray. That's a fantastic time. You have 20-30 minutes if you're in the car, or 15 minutes, 5 minutes to pray and realign yourself with the Spirit. That's a great use of that time. But when was the last time you were really still? And so I loved what he said about hey man, you need to think about, what are your priorities? What are the things you really want to focus on, and what are the areas you really want to push forward? And so that meant me saying no to things. It meant me saying no to good things, really cool opportunities, but realizing that it was going to eat up the time that I'd set aside to do certain things. And that's hard for me to say no. I love to say yes because I love to give. There's even a little bit of a selfishness in that as well. I love to give because there's almost an expectation sometimes. So that was interesting, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But starting to realize that I need to say no to things that are not on the priority list, and realizing, okay, I'm doing way too much, and I'm constantly task switching. Task switching is awful for your productivity. And that is, you're working on one thing, and 20 minutes in, 20 seconds in, you're like, oh, I should go do this one other thing. It'll only take me 3 minutes. That's fine. Even if it only takes you 30 seconds, you're breaking from the work you're currently doing, and you're switching tasks. You're switching your brain to focus on something else. And that's awful for your creativity. You can read any book. You can read any sort of article on that. They will all say the same thing. Task switching is really, really bad for you, especially when you're trying to do your deep work. Trying to work 10, 12-hour days, some people can really do that. And Elon Musk, right? He's a rare case where he can work a 16-hour day, no problem. But for the vast majority of us, we really only have about 4 to 5 hours of deep work that we can stay focused and really get it done and uninterrupted. Then with the rest of the time, we really should use that to either kind of prep for the next day, recharge, and do it all over again. Now, some people might be like, well, that's just an excuse for, lazy people. I don't know. The science begs to differ. And something that ties into this, something that I actually did this past weekend, was a bunch of things got canceled, my Friday night to Saturday. And all of a sudden I had this big open white space. You'll also notice that if you start saying no to things, you'll have extra white space on your calendar to do the things you really want to go do. And I'd wanted to read this book for a little while now. It's called The Freedom of Self Forgetfulness by Timothy Keller, The Path to True Christian Joy. And I was like, all right, it's 44 pages. It's super, super thin. I was like, let me sit down and actually go through this book. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from here that like really hit home for me, but it really ties in with this constant pressure to do more things. But let me read the passage that this whole book is written on, which is from 1 Corinthians 3:21, chapter 4, verse 7. So then, no more boasting about men. All things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future. All are yours, and you are of Christ, and Christ is of God. So then, men ought to regard us as servants of Christ, and those entrusted with the secret things of God. Now, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. I care very little if I am judged by you or by human court. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear. But that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait till the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of men's hearts. At that time, each will receive his praise from God. Now, brothers, I have applied these things to myself and Apollos for your benefit, so that you may learn from us the meaning of the saying, do not go beyond what is written. Then you will not take pride in one man over another. For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not? There's 3 chapters in this book that the first 2 chapters are building the case for, and then the third one kind of wraps it all together. Well, one of the lines in here is, it is the normal state of the human heart to try to build its identity around something else besides God. Man, that is so true. I'm constantly I'm feeling like, I'm satisfied in God, and then all of a sudden I start to slip away and I put other things before God really easily. That's why I need to check my own heart often and have other brothers and sisters check my own heart and be like, hey man, what are you doing and why are you doing it? The big problem with trying to do more things is we're only doing them really for others. One of the quotes in here is, people sometimes say their feelings are hurt, but our feelings can't be hurt. It is the ego that hurts, my sense of self, my identity. Our feelings are fine. It is my ego that hurts. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity says this, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having it more than the next person. We say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good looking, but they are not. They are proud of being richer or cleverer or better looking than others. If everyone else became equally rich or clever or good looking, there would be nothing to be proud about. It's that classic quote in Incredibles where he's like, if everyone was super, no one would be. The only reason why we want those things is really because it's our pride. It's our ego that is talking. Pride is the pleasure of having it more than the next person. I want to read another part from the book. This is an interview with Madonna in Vogue magazine, and this is a quick little paragraph that was taken out from it. This is what she says. My drive in life comes from a fear of being mediocre. That is always pushing me. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being. But then I feel I am still mediocre and uninteresting unless I do something else. Because even though I have become somebody, I still have to prove that I am somebody. My struggle has never ended, and I guess it never will. This is now the author speaking. I will tell you one thing. Madonna knows herself better than most of us know ourselves. Every time she accomplishes something, these are the kind of thoughts she has. Now I've got the verdict. Now I am somebody. But then, the next day, she realizes that unless I keep going, I am not. My ego cannot be satisfied. My sense of self, my desire for worth, my need to make sure I am somebody, it is not fulfilled. I keep thinking I have won it from what people have said about me and what the magazines and newspapers have written. But the next day, I have to go and look elsewhere. Why? Because my ego is not satisfied. It is a black hole. It doesn't matter how much I throw into it. The cupboard is always bare. I keep putting all sorts of things into it every morning, feeding it, but the next night it is bare. I have become somebody, but I still need to become somebody. We might be tempted to think she is neurotic. No, she knows herself. She is ahead of most of us. That is the normal state of the human self, and it's what Paul is talking about to the Corinthians. All these people who are fighting over him, claiming a special relationship with him, are showing tremendous amounts of pride. They are unable to enjoy the fact that they know Paul. They have used their relationship with him for one-upmanship over the other in the church. And this next part right here really hit home. You know how people are always like, you can't live for other people, don't get validation from other people, or if you do get validation, make sure it's the right people, or set your own standard. Well, this is what Paul would say to that. What would Paul say to those who tell him to set his own standards? He would say it is a trap he will not fall into. You see, it is a trap to say that we should not worry about everyone else's standards, just set our own, but that's not the answer. Boosting our self-esteem by living up to our own standards or someone else's sounds like a great solution, but it does not deliver. It cannot deliver. I cannot live up to my parents' standards, and that makes me feel terrible. I cannot live up to your standards, and that makes me feel terrible. I cannot live up to society's standards, and that makes me feel terrible. I cannot live up to other society's standards, and that makes me feel terrible. Perhaps the solution is to set my own standards, but I cannot keep them either. And that makes me feel terrible, unless I set incredibly low standards. Are low standards a solution? Not at all. That makes me feel terrible because now I realize I am the type of person who has low standards. Trying to boost our self-esteem by trying to build up our own standards or someone else's is a trap, and it's not the answer. And this is what Paul says to that. Paul does not look to the Corinthians for his identity. He does not go to them for the verdict that he is somebody. He does not get that sense of identity from them, but he does not get it from himself either. He knows that trying to find self-esteem by living up to a certain set of standards is a trap. Now, we start to discover where Paul finds that sense of self, that sense of identity. Be warned, at this point he moves right off our map. He moves into a territory that we know nothing about. Paul was a man of incredible stature. I think it would be hard to disagree with the view that he is one of the 6 or 7 most influential leaders in the history of the human race. He had an enormous ballast, a tremendous influence, incredible confidence. He moved ahead and nothing fazed him. And yet, in 1 Timothy, he says, Jesus Christ came to the world to save sinners, of whom I am the chief. 1 Timothy 1:15. Not I was chief, but I am chief, or I am the worst. This is off our maps. We are not used to someone who has incredible confidence volunteering the opinion that they are one of the worst people. We are not used to someone who is totally honest and totally aware of all sorts of moral flaws, yet has incredible poise and confidence. We cannot do that. Do you know why? Because we are judging ourselves. Paul will not do that. When he says he will not let the Corinthians judge him, nor he judge himself, he is saying that he knows about his sins, but he does not connect them to himself and his identity. His sins and his identity are not connected. He refuses to play that game. He does not see a sin and let it destroy his sense of identity. He will not make a connection. Neither does he see an accomplishment and congratulate himself. He sees all kinds of sins in himself and all kinds of accomplishments too, but he refuses to connect them with himself or his identity. So although he knows himself to be chief of sinners, the fact is not going to stop him from doing the things that he is called to do. We cannot be more different from Paul. If I think of myself as a bad person, I do not have any confidence. If I think of myself as a sinner, as someone who is filled with pride, someone filled with lust, anger, and greed, and all the things that Paul says he is filled with, I have no confidence. Because we are judging ourselves, we set our own standards and then we condemn ourselves. The ego will never be satisfied that way. Never. Paul is saying something astounding. I don't care what you think, and I don't care what I think. He is bringing to us new territory that we know nothing about. His ego is not puffed up, it is filled up. He is talking about humility. Although I hate using the word humility because this has nothing to do with our idea of humility, Paul is saying that he has reached a place where his ego draws no more attention to itself than any other part of his body. He has reached the place where he is not thinking any more about himself. When he does something wrong or something good, he does not connect it to himself anymore. This line right here really stuck out to me. If we were to meet a truly humble person, we would never come away from meeting them thinking they were humble. Let me say that again. If we were to meet a truly humble person, we would never come away from meeting them thinking they were humble. They would not be always telling us they were a nobody, because a person who keeps saying they are a nobody is actually a self-obsessed person. Man. Gosh, that really, that kind of hits home for me. I keep priding myself on the things that I do, like I am somebody. I keep setting standards of myself, and when I hit them, I feel good for the day. Don't get me wrong, when I'm able to accomplish all my things of the day, I feel great. But then a new day comes and I'm back in the courtroom and everything resets. This is in chapter 3 now. This is what Timothy says. Do you not realize that it is only the gospel of Jesus Christ that you get the verdict before the performance? The atheist might say that they get their self-image from being a good person. They are a good person, and they hope eventually they will get a verdict that confirms they are a good person. Performance leads to the verdict. For the Buddhist too, performance leads to the verdict. If you are a Muslim, performance leads to the verdict. All this means that every day you are in the courtroom. Every day you are on trial. That is the problem. But Paul is saying that in Christianity, the verdict leads to the performance. It is not the performance that leads to the verdict. In Christianity, the moment we believe, God imputes Christ's perfect performance to us as if it were our own and adopts us into his family. In other words, God can say to us, just as he once said to Christ, "You are my son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." You see, the verdict is in, and now I perform on the basis of the verdict, because he loves me and accepts me. I do not have to do things just to build up my resume. I do not have to do things just to make me look good. I can do things for the joy of doing them. I can help people to help people, not so I can feel better about myself, not so I can fill up the emptiness. In Christianity, the verdict can give you the performance. How can that be? Here's Paul's answer. He is out of the courtroom. He is out of the trial. How? Because Jesus Christ went on trial instead. Jesus went into the courtroom. He was on trial. It was an unjust trial in a kangaroo court. He did not complain. Like the lamb before the shears, he was silent. He was struck, beaten, put to death. Why? As a substitute. He took the condemnation we deserved. He faced the trial that should be ours, so that we do not have to face any more trials. So I simply need to ask God to accept me because of what the Lord Jesus has done. Then the only person whose opinion counts looks at me and finds me more valuable than all the jewels in the earth. Let me say that true Christian identity operates totally different from any other kind of identity. Self-forgetfulness takes you out of the courtroom. The trial is over. The verdict is in. Guys, I just want to encourage you that if you're feeling like I was feeling that I needed to do more, I needed to add more things to my plate to accomplish my goals, or that it was going to satisfy me somehow, it's not. Setting your own standards, living for other people's standards, a mix of both, that's not the solution. You have to not care what you even think of yourself. You have to only value what Christ has already said about you. That's it. You don't have to put yourself in the courtroom anymore. You're free from that. I love you guys. I hope this has been encouraging. What I covered in here is just the surface. I'm sure there's a million questions that you guys have, so please ask them. Ask them in my comments, ask them to your church leaders, have conversations with other believers. Seek truth. Remember, the only thing that is going to last beyond your life right here, right? You can get all the status, money, fame, whatever work you want. The only thing that's going to last is your faith. That's it. And that should be your number one priority. I'm really appreciative to myself here. Thanks for listening, watching, subscribing. I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. I'm excited to see what the Lord is going to put on my heart to share next week. And I hope you guys are excited for that as well. So consider subscribing.